How do you make a Bitcoin bottom? What are the things you need? Like, is it interest rates, sentiment, precious metals, bond market, NASDAQ, altcoin breakouts, oversold sentiment, or how about all of the above? Want to know more? Stay with this stream. Want to know why being bullish isn't as ridiculous as it seems? Want to know why I went with the cringe laser eyes on the thumbnail? I will tell you. This is the market update. I am your host, Bill Noble. If you need a roadmap in crypto, subscribe to this channel. Turn on alerts so you know when we're going live. And if the content works for you, please hit the like button. That lets me help you. Now, today, we're going to do tons of live TA about all the things I just mentioned. You're going to sit there and think that I'm nuts for thinking that 63K is a stealth holiday breakout, potentially. You'll be shocked to know that Chainlink is up 10% in one day. And you're going to be like, Chainlink? I thought Chainlink was boring. Well, maybe, but it's up 10% in the last 7 days. And no one seems to care. Well, I think people have started to act like altcoins are invisible. They're not there anymore. There's no such thing as an altcoin rally ever again, which was a hallmark of the 2019 bottom. And if I don't say so myself, this whole idea about 40K has literally become consensus. I was forced to deal with it. I was forced to say something. I put a Michael Saylor scenario together where, that would all go wrong. And then it didn't. And that is the most important thing about major turns in markets. In other words, this Michael Saylor news was terrible, right? I mean, he's over leveraged. He was going to have to sell. All this type of stuff. And the market didn't go down. It didn't. It should have. Because, everybody, it was the ghost of FTX. It was, it's another over-leveraged crypto blow-up. And Jamie Dimon was all over it, even though Wall Street has never gotten over-leveraged and blown up. That's only happened like literally 5 times throughout my Wall Street career. And then, like I said, 40K became something that you had to discuss, right? Like here's Altcoin Daily, Cardone, Bitcoin to 40K by November. Now we can discuss September, October, and November, or maybe October. We can discuss that because there's some really interesting Gann work, but there's also some really interesting Gann work about July, which has been aggressively featured in, all of our Patreon tiers, with work just released, believe it or not, including the free tiers, they got a little research. So, if you want to know what's so special about July 4th, other than it's the 250th anniversary of America, you might want to check that out, right? The Patreon link is down below. And needless to say, to all of our friends in the United States, happy 4th of July. Hopefully you partook. Hopefully your party was better than the party, or at least the state fair that they had in Washington. But that's okay. They had great fireworks for World War II vets, and we'll look into that. We'll look into a lot of things and why on the 250th anniversary of America, there's nothing more patriotic than that you can do than rebel against the system, because that's what Independence Day was all about. What we need to get independent from is, let's see, I don't know, the lizards of NASDAQ, the dummies who hold that NASDAQ up like the Fed, and the plunge protection team, which I'm still convinced is some sort of almost rogue element. And then, of course, there's what life is like when you go to the cash register at Costco, and the idea that we just need a better currency, right? Fix the money, fix the world. Does anybody remember this? Now is a good time to be reminding you of that. Now is a really good time because, you have sentiment around Bitcoin and around crypto that, in a way reminds me very much of 16K in the sense that everybody was saying they were going to buy it at 10K. And at 60K, everybody said they were going to buy it at 50 or 40. Now, if something happens to NASDAQ in the fall, you may very well get something like that. Like I can see, like if NASDAQ goes down 30%, then nobody is safe. But is that going to happen today? No. Is everybody expecting Bitcoin to go lower? Yes. So when everyone expects it to go lower, what might it do? Zcash. Oh my God, I'm talking about Zcash. I didn't want to pay 500. I didn't want to pay 400. I thought I was going to get it at 200, but it really went to 300. And then all of a sudden I said, oh my God, I just did what everybody else was doing. I brought up 40K and I said I wanted to buy it lower. Sometimes you just have to fade yourself. Sometimes you have to ask yourself, did I just join the wildebeest herd? Am I thundering along with the crowd, right? Headed for the river filled with crocodiles? Well, the answer to that is yes. And the good news is that's happened before. And what really matters is that you try to get it turned around. Because I think if Bitcoin went to 40K right now, I think everybody would be like, okay, well, it's at 40K and the only content that sells on YouTube right now is disaster corn, right? I mean, I thought I overtalked Michael Saylor and the rest of YouTube kept talking Michael Saylor like 5 days after I stopped, right? That disaster stuff continues to sell, which in and of itself is an indicator. It is. It's like, oh, okay. Well, the only thing anybody wants to hear about is negative stuff. Okay. Well, you know what? Let's make green thumbnails and let's put out bullish stuff. And, some of that content's going somewhere, but I put together top 10 altcoins I'm looking at. No interest, none, which again is making me interested. It's making me interested. All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have some basic news followed by massive live TA and PowerPoint. Okay. Big Daddy Crypto became a member, all access, sir. Welcome back. Welcome back. Okay. Now, let's start with Metaplanet. Interesting. So, with all the drama about Michael Saylor and the Bitcoin treasury companies, a Japanese Bitcoin treasury company, basically, the original imitator of strategy, just added 2,000 Bitcoin. So, maybe they bought it at the top, but they had enough ammo to be buying it at 58 or 60. Very interesting strategy. Also, as a sign of the times, okay, the orange man's son, okay, has a Bitcoin company, a Bitcoin mining company that they had to do a 15-to-1 reverse stock split in order to keep the stock listed on NASDAQ. Meaning the stock crashed so bad that it was in danger of losing its NASDAQ listing because it was becoming like a penny stock or a junk stock. You have to have a certain stock price on NASDAQ to be able to stay on NASDAQ. Now, again, if that's where we are, think about this. So Eric Trump keeps his company on NASDAQ. And I'm wondering if Uncle Sugar would bail out Michael Saylor, would essentially take his Bitcoin as the strategic Bitcoin reserve, or they're going to make some kind of announcement. There was an article in Zero Hedge about whether or not Bitcoin was too big to fail and whether or not Bitcoin needed a government bailout just like a bank would. Now, I kind of think that's ridiculous, even though it makes for great content. Here's the article. Could the government use tax dollars to bail out Bitcoin? Well, the Orange Man's family owns it. And of course, you know, that would bring great shame to Bitcoin, allegedly, right? That said, if the strategic Bitcoin reserve is whatever Michael Saylor has to sell, this could explain why STRC turned around, and nobody noticed this on the way down. And I don't think anyone's paying attention to it on the way up, because, you know, Michael Saylor was going to go out of business and strategy was going to get nuked and it was all over. And then the next thing you know, this thing goes from 72 to 88 with Bitcoin basically doing nothing, and has recouped a substantial amount of its losses after, of course, retail panics and gets smoked out. And it's very simple, right? It was easy to get negative down here, not necessarily on STRC, but on this idea that Saylor was going to need to sell Bitcoin in order to stop this from happening. Now, as it turns out, he pulled a total genius move and said, okay, we will sell Bitcoin if we need to. So people made fun of him, but not as much as they would have if he actually had to puke, you know, billions in Bitcoin. Now, I personally think that would have completely ended the story, as I discussed, but he pulled it off. STRC retraced to some normal level. And you're asking yourself at this point, what's the problem? What's the problem? Like, the news pretty much outside the FTX Black Swan, the news could not have been more bearish, and Bitcoin did not go down. And there's another way. My friend Jordy Visser is looking at it this way. There's another way to look at this 40 and 50K crowd. And it's that they've gotten a little greedy. In other words, so many people wanted to go lower so they could buy. In those cases, it never goes lower. Now, something may happen later, but what if they squeeze this up to like 75 or maybe 80? And you're like, that can't happen. That's not going to happen. Really? Okay. Well, maybe we should have a look, because there are a lot of like Lux Algo signals and a lot of like basic signals here that are worth looking at when it comes to Bitcoin TA. Okay. So we've discussed this triangle. This may be the big event of the holiday weekend. So you had a downward sloping trend line in Bitcoin, and you broke out near the apex on the upside very clearly. Like, this is clearly an exit of this triangle, right? So that's ridiculously bullish because it happened at the apex of the triangle. And, you know, if you use basic triangle math, the minimum target, I would guess, the minimum target is 68. Okay? Because that's the small distance. Now, if you want to get frisky, the medium target, as measured as this distance from the point of the breakout, is 73, which is, you know, that's pretty robust, considering it essentially that would be a complete unwind of the Michael Saylor downtrade. That doesn't seem unreasonable to me at all, because the Michael Saylor trade is over, according to STRC and ridiculously bearish sentiment. And then, of course, if you really want to have a laugh, there's the maximum trade, the maximum distance, which is 80. And I don't know what's so ridiculous about 80 because you were back up at 8. The market was at 80 on May 12th. It was at 82. Yes, it ran into a huge moving average and got slammed. Okay. But why is 80 ridiculous? Is it? I don't think so. Now, your first question is, why is it not ridiculous? So we're going to go through the charts, but let's try to condense the narrative. You have silver bottoming. You have ETH as the best looking chart relative to its 21-day moving average. We'll go over it. We are also going to have to get real as to what the view of Kevin Warsh is on life and interest rates, right? He says prices are too high and he wants inflation at 2%. Well, which prices is he talking about? Is he talking about the prices at Costco or is he talking about NASDAQ? Which prices are too high? Which prices are driving inflation? You know, and are you going to get inflation to 2% by raising interest rates to 10%? Well, you're going to kill everyone's credit card. You're going to make housing impossible. But if NASDAQ is still up, people paying $25 a pound for steak are going to continue to do so. And if you raise it to 26 or 27, they're going to pay because they've got NASDAQ money. Now, speaking of NASDAQ, there are certain momentum components of NASDAQ that are flat out already crashing. And semis have rolled over, as I've detailed ad nauseum in the last 3 streams. So all of this Momo investing has been sold by hedge funds, bought by retail. Then you also have the crypto hedge funds, which are unto themselves giga short. So stock fund or stock hedge funds or macro hedge funds have room for the Bitcoin ETF. Everyone just got done selling the Bitcoin ETF. Meanwhile, hedge funds just watch some altcoins go 10% in their face. And they have to decide whether or not they're going to stay short. Now, it's paid to stay short the whole way down. But my attitude is, particularly with the Bitcoin triangle, is what happens if it doesn't? Like what happens if the guys that sold NASDAQ come in to buy the Bitcoin ETF as the crypto hedge funds are covering? And this whole thing comes together with this July Fed meeting. Because, you know, all Kevin Warsh has to say is to state the obvious, that he's concerned about risks in the labor market. Every jobs number gets revised down. That's like 13 of the last 15. They're all revised lower. So the headline numbers are all bunk. And then this number was terrible. And again, I think on purpose. On purpose. Why? Because they want rates down. They want rates down. And you know what they're getting? They're getting the exact opposite. Don't believe me? Look at this. Okay, so this is a chart of the interest rate on the 2-year government bond, which is very closely tied to what the Fed does. Very closely tied. So 1 minute in March, this thing has an interest rate of 3.3. And then we have a problem in the Strait of Hormuz, and we got inflation again, and the Fed's going to have to hike rates. And the 2-year note goes to 4.2. So we had 100 basis point increase in short-term interest rates because everybody went from cutting to hiking, basically. Now, what if off this Fed meeting, we go back to neutral? Or we go back to, yeah, prices are a problem, but we are really worried about this labor market. We've been paying the prices since 2021. Powell hiked 500 basis points, and where did that get us? Especially since, you know, the fuel squeeze and the oil supply squeeze is still ongoing. Everyone's complaining that gas prices are high, despite the fact that oil is lower. Oil may be lower as a function of manipulating the price of oil. Supplies of oil are still tight. What is a Fed hike going to do about that? Nothing. Nothing. The Fed's problem is the labor market. Namely, if you lose your job, getting another one that's the same kind of job seems to be very difficult. And there's no growth in the labor market. So the 2-year note breaks or just glides outside of this channel, comes back up and retests it right here. And then there's this big decision to make around the 21-day moving average. And I bet Kevin Warsh comes out and goes, yeah, you know what? We're not exactly thrilled with inflation, but we are worried about the labor market too. That's all he has to say. He doesn't have to cut. He doesn't have to hike. He doesn't say anything. He's like, yeah, you know what? The Fed does this all the time. Yeah, you know, we're noticing that there's risks to the labor market. This thing's going to be at 380, right? Well, another thing I noticed about interest rates, right? So what do long-term bonds love? They like neutral and soft economic data. They like a Fed chairman who is aware of inflation and doesn't like it. Okay. But if you have like softening economic conditions and a Fed that has credibility, you can have rates fall, like your 30-year mortgage rates fall, and bonds go up. Rates down, bonds up. Well, this is the long bond futures contract. And of course, this is incomplete and borderline not so responsible for drawing it. However, even if bonds go down a little, this is starting to look like a head and shoulders bottom. And if you had a situation at the end of the month where Uncle Kevin comes out and says something neutral, like he doesn't have to do anything dramatic, he just has to go, yeah, can we go back to neutral, please? This is going to smoke to the upside. Now, falling interest rates, rising bonds, right? Very good for Bitcoin. Especially if you have like economic growth with data centers going on at the same time. By the way, another thing the Fed is not going to stop with higher rates. People are delusional. They're going to pay for chips. They're going to build everything. It doesn't matter what they do. Do you think the Fed changing rates is going to affect what these hyperscaler madmen are going to pay for memory and chips? Get out of here. Samsung's raising prices 20%. Fed could raise rates to 10%. The lizards are going to buy them because they know that if they don't win the AI race, they're going away, right? Like Anthropic, ChatGPT, Google, all of these companies, if they don't win the AI race, they literally go away. Just like the railroad and the auto bust. Same thing. And the dot-com bust, by the way. Same thing. You lose, you go away. Silver, hammered into insensibility, has been up 3 days in a row and is nowhere near the 21-day or the 200-day moving average. This is grinding up and hurting shorts, and I'm really interested to see what happens if you got kind of a neutral Fed. Feels like it wants to go up, in all honesty. And if you want to have a real laugh, if you want to have your, I don't know, people maybe are not old enough to remember the Sunday funnies, the cartoons that used to come in newspapers on Sunday. Ethereum broke through the 21-day moving average and just smoked through it. Like there wasn't even really a retest. They tried to sell on this candle and the market was like, okay, that's nice. Rip. I mean, there's no resistance in ETH. You're talking about 1950. You've also got a divergence going on the Luxalgo oscillators. Okay. And you definitely have one in Bitcoin because Bitcoin made a new low in price and a higher low on the Luxalgo version of stochastics. These divergences don't unwind themselves on the first trade. They take multiple legs to unwind themselves. Like Chainlink, speaking of like boring boomer coins that no one's paying attention to. Like everybody negative crypto, Chainlink breaking out, retesting the 21-day moving average, already up 10%, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. Now, I understand why nobody cares, because people have done nothing but lose money. But there are a lot of coins that we've been looking at, that are up 10% over the last 7 days. Hyperliquid. Big Daddy Crypto was like, when are we going to talk about Hyperliquid? How about right now? Right now. Pyth network, kind of like AI and data and things like that. It's up 16%. And bag holders are selling. Bag holders are selling. And I can't wait to see what happens if the bag holders sell and it doesn't go back down. In other words, this is going to be very typical of altcoins, right? People liked it earlier in the year, and now every time it goes up, everybody gets out. This is Pyth. All this AI-related coins, all these AI-related products, decentralized physical infrastructure, you name it, people act like it's not there. Like it doesn't exist. I'm serious. XRP, anyone? XRP at a crossroads. Here's the Lux Algo downward sloping channel. Here's XRP trying to exit and come back and retest the top of the line and the 21-day moving average. You realize equilibrium in XRP is at $1.27. It's currently at $1.13, and no one is interested. This is like dead. It's going to zero. I can still hear this whole narrative, right? And crypto doesn't have to go up forever. It's just that this feels like people are caught, and it may be very difficult to make a decision about Bitcoin when Bitcoin's at 75 or 80. It's like, do you buy at 80, or do you, wait for it to dip? And if it dips, does it go to 40, or does it not really go down at all? It becomes, I think, a much harder decision. Now, speaking of a much harder decision, Zcash. Well, what do you know? This is a diamond. This is a giant diamond in Zcash. Now, I don't exactly know where this top line should be. I don't know if it should be there, which means Zcash has got a lot of room to go back to the top of the diamond at 585. But do you have any idea what happens if Zcash breaks out of this thing on the upside? And I'm looking at this going, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. The guy that was talking about $2,000 Zcash just got done quibbling over whether he pays 400, 300, or 200. I'm like, oh, I just did what everyone else did. I just did it. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody thinks that people who do these shows like that we're some sort of like psychic oracles. Not true. Right. But you got to like be critical of, you got to be honest with yourself. Like, wait a minute. I just did this. Monero sitting on top of its 21-day moving average. Are we seeing a pattern here? I think we're seeing a pattern. And ironically, ETH is the leader. And no one is interested in this. No one. With these lizards that are out there, it's unbelievable. Even Railgun. Okay. Railgun is sitting in a major support zone. The Grandpa Keeter special. I think this could just turn around and just fly. And also, another possible catalyst is that Hyperliquid could go again. Because remember, Hyperliquid has got this Lux Algo triangle that it's been in forever. It's kind of like the opposite of Bitcoin. It's been rallying, and it's in this triangle. And if they take out the top, this could be a flagpole, a flag, and flags fly at half mast. Meaning, if you want to drink some Kool-Aid, drink this. What happens if that's the flagpole? This is the flag, and then you add another flagpole to it. That's 125. Now, I don't want to be the guy that gets bullish at 70, when it was at 30, but I am discussing the consequences of a major breakout. And maybe the big holiday trade here is that everybody just slept on this thing. Everybody just went to sleep on altcoins with ETH breaking out. Do you see where the problem is? And do you see the possibility of rates coming down because of the job situation and silver going up? Therefore, reigniting this dollar debasement trade? Like, why are we ignoring the obvious? I mean, even this goofball gets it. This is Peter Schiff, right? The guy who's always harassing Michael Saylor, the guy who's had the huge victory lap on gold relative to Bitcoin. Full-time employment in June collapses by 514,000 to the lowest level since 2004, bringing total full-time job losses to 2.2 million since the Orange Man took office for the second time. The massive job losses, together with rising prices, is why the Orange Man's popularity is so low. Oh, okay. And I see. The Fed chairman that he appointed is going to hike rates into that story, right? Oh my God, shut up. No way. No way. This bond market is wrong. Wrong, wrong. Big Daddy wants to see the AERO chart. AERO chart was prominently featured in the Patreon research. Happy to pull it up here. Folks, I got news for you about this thing. This is going up because it is very clear to me that this is a head and shoulders bottom. And it's also interesting that this could be related to the ETH rally. Because remember, this is the base DEX, right? I mean, this is a breakout. This is an absolute breakout. They broke out of the neckline. Okay. They played games with this. So I know they know it's there. Lux Algo puts support underneath it, and the upside target is 85 cents. Currently, it's at 50. And to be honest with you, when AERO gets going, right? I mean, AERO is one of these coins where it doesn't just do these little moves. I mean, when it moves, it goes from 60 cents to $1.90. It doesn't do small moves. What happens if this is a major bottom in AERO? I mean, it's simple, right? I mean, this is like technical analysis textbook, page 20. Boom. Especially when you put it together with the ETH chart, together with the Chainlink chart, together with the silver chart, which has had a historical relationship with ETH. NEAR, which unquestionably makes our list of sleeper coins, even though NEAR has done well this year. Seems very clear to me when it comes to NEAR. That NEAR retraced 62% of its move up, its recent move up. Went to $1.93. naturally, of course, has to come down here and stop everybody out, make everybody thinks it's no good, but was still on top of the 200-day, and then glides back above the 62% retracement. Nothing unusual here at all. And if you want to get wild, it's the ugly formations that you can't necessarily see that wind up working. You know, this is your AI layer one. I know layer ones don't exist anymore. No one thinks they exist, but they do. So near, you know, obviously you need to break back above 3. And if you did, you get 5.2. You know, and this guy, Arthur Hayes, I keep thinking about how he sold all of this. He sold Zcash. He sold Near. He kept WorldCoin. Everybody sold thinking it was going lower. And what's going to happen when they realize it's not going lower? Right? Grandpa Keeter said the Solana DEXes are getting a bid this week. You know, we were looking at the YouTube member area where, oh, by the way, we have done nothing. Toby has done nothing but pound the table on last chance shopping, buy the small caps. Crickets, no one listening except our members. You know, Syrup is up 3% today. Egan Cloud, like Syrup, DeFi, it's up 20% over the last 7 days. I'm reading from our lists of coins that we like. These were coins that we actually liked at the end of May before this Michael Saylor mess. Uniswap up 9% along with Chainlink. Hello. Who's talking about that on YouTube? We're too busy talking about 40K. That's crazy. I mean, if you want to talk about 40K is a Michael Saylor NASDAQ problem in October. Because when the equity market blows up, it's in October. All the big crashes are in October. But this is not the story now. It's not. It absolutely is not. DEXE up 7%, up 1% today with everything else down. Come on, man. Come on. You know, and a lot of these like identity protocols, like, you know, like WorldCoin has been underperforming, but there are other aspects. There are other coins that are doing well in that same space. Right. And I'm checking like our small cap-ish portfolio. Oh, and again, we don't know if it's a meme coin or not, but we were looking at Space ID with a 16 million market cap. These are things that Toby finds or picks live, by the way. Create, discover, register, trade, manage, one place for digital identities. Very interesting. You know, the alpha, I think, is in the small caps. Toby has been saying this for a long time. Wing Raven says he's listening. He's just waiting for the entry. Big Daddy said DCA over the next 4 months. I'm down with that. I think everyone forgot about DCA. Everyone's just like, yeah, it's going to 40. I'll buy it at 40. And it might. However, I'm going to say something crazy. I mean, we covered this. I don't want to give it all away in the platinum area, but, you know, one of the things that I think drives crypto, really it drives everything if you listen to Stan Druckenmiller, is this whole idea of big Fed shifts. Right now, Kevin Warsh came in and has said nothing. He says he doesn't like inflation. Why would he? Why would he? Oh yeah, everything's fine. It's great. It's transitory, right? We did that with Powell. It's crazy. Nuts. Let's go to the PowerPoint, which is making a huge aggressive comeback. This was the hallmark of the original market update. Okay, so BTC held the panic low. The macro has shifted. Saylor did not nuke. So you have a failed breakdown, a thin holiday market, a Fed pivot clock, and an altcoin rotation. Before I do that, let me get Tau for one of our members. That's the benefit of being a members. Noticing all these like very basic formations. Now, Tau isn't close to breaking out of this. It's still below the 21-day moving average. But these things are there. Like, that was a head and shoulders, didn't work out. Okay, these flags are going to resolve themselves. And if they resolve themselves on the upside, you could have higher prices. Back to PowerPoint. Okay, so 63,105 is an important trigger. If it gets above that, we're showing 70K minimum. Obvious stop is 58K. Okay, October 6th, the 1-year anniversary of the top, could be the target date for any rally. Or it could be July, August, and September, with Rectember and Rocktober to be determined. But I don't think this market can go lower unless it goes higher first. And I think the most painful thing that can happen is that all these people who want to buy it lower are confronted with having to potentially buy it at 70, particularly all these hedge funds that are short and all these characters that threw in the towel on the Bitcoin ETF so they could buy the top in semis. I still think that's just absolutely nuts. Okay. So there's a lot of Gann work for July. The Gann work for July is, July 1-ish was the low. July 4th is holiday ignition. So the big Gann point was actually around July 3rd. It's 270 days from the October top. Those numbers in Gann are a big deal. July 15th to July 20th is kind of this like big Gann Jupiter window for expansion and luck, detailed in Patreon. July 28th is potentially the FOMC accelerant. He's got to discuss the weak jobs number. He's got to discuss it. It's not optional. June payrolls, as we discussed, were only up 57K. They were supposed to be up 110K. April and May were revised down. Labor force participation fell. Now, what is labor force participation? If labor force participation falls, it means people give up on finding a job. And they move in with their parents. They just pack it in. I mean, because, like I said, if you get pushed off the wagon here, the sober reality is with hyperscaler spending that no one is hiring. It isn't that they made an AI agent capable of doing your spreadsheet and your PowerPoint. That may be true in some cases. Not true in all cases. Does not explain the mass carnage in the employment market, particularly in the tech sector. Tens of thousands of people, all content creators and guitar players, if they can't find new jobs. So the market has to translate, rate hike fears have to cool. Short-term interest rates have to chill out. The dollar, like King Dollar, has to stop going up. We discussed that last time. And risk assets like crypto can get a little oxygen. Okay. If full-time jobs are rolling over, hawkish forever gets much harder. Warsh can talk 2% inflation credibility while quietly preserving his optionality. Oh, I love that. Warsh is giving himself room to move by saying next to nothing. Next to nothing. The orange man says prices are too high. Warsh says prices are too high. It's just parroting his boss in a more credible way. This is where Greenspan style productivity lowers inflation could matter. In other words, I predict that the biggest numbers that are going to come out are about productivity. Because I think the big deal is that the people who are employed are being given tools to make them massively more productive. Notice I was around in 2000 when, Excel hit and the internet hit, and, you could get a job based on what you could do with Excel combined with good market data. I mean, my career at Wall Street was made by a company called Logical Information Machines that had a query engine inside a spreadsheet program. And I could do things with that. That's how I got to Goldman. Period. I mean, it was so expensive, Goldman would have to fight every year to keep it, but it was phenomenal. Okay. So Warsh in public says he doesn't want inflation above 2%. He needs independence from Trump pressure. He needs weak jobs and falling interest rates. Okay. Not cutting rates now, but less hawkish than feared. By the way, that's ridiculously bullish for Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin is out ahead of it because anybody with a brain knows this payroll number is terrible. And frequently the payroll number comes out. It takes people a weekend to think about it and figure it out. And then the payroll number trade happens. Okay. Dollar debasement trade may be rebooting. We have $2 trillion deficits. We have $39 trillion in total debt. We print money. I don't know how we pay for the stuff that we do. Like, how do they maintain this sound money narrative? How do they do that? The only sound money is Bitcoin. So a daily close above 63K makes it in Bitcoin because of the triangle that we talked about. Okay. Bitcoin is also bouncing off of its discount zone right here in the middle. Kind of fancy how the charts go in PowerPoint now. Why this move can get crazy. Crowded shorts. 63 to 66K forces shorts out in a thin summer liquidity. Shorts exit at the market. If everybody's short, who's the seller? The Bitcoin ETF guys puked it out. They're not sellers. They're done. So where are they going to get the liquidity to cover all these shorts again? Where are they going to get the Bitcoin ETF from? Who's selling the Bitcoin ETF? Nobody. The answer is nobody. The answer is they're going to have to bid up prices for a seller to come in. I'm not making this up. Everybody sold. I mean, were there enough headlines about Bitcoin ETF redemptions? Did you catch any of that? Saylor didn't have to sell. Hedge funds are short, so who's the seller? Nobody. Nobody. Okay, believe it or not, and I'm actually going to take this off PowerPoint. I was actually kind of shocked about this chart. So I have this thing that somebody gave me when I did Princess's show. I have Bitcoin dominance taking stable coins out. So you can't just look at Bitcoin dominance anymore because stable coins are growing all the time, right? So if you look at BTCD X stables through this formula this guy gave me, this thing is breaking below its 200-day moving average. And there's a Lux Algo sell signal, a fairly robust one right here. And yeah, you guessed it. This could possibly be a rather ugly looking head and shoulders top. Now, which means Bitcoin dominance can fall. So that either means, that either means Bitcoin falls out of bed, something terrible, or altcoins do better. Altcoins do a lot better. And you're like, well, Bill, altcoins aren't going to do a lot better. And I'm like, okay, well, how come ETH is exploding through its 21-day moving average while every other cryptocurrency is kind of fatitzeling around that area? Is anyone following this, that Bitcoin dominance is breaking down as ETH is exploding through an important moving average? Nobody. We're too busy doing the 12th Michael Saylor video in a row. Now, I did my share of Michael Saylor videos, and I probably took that too far. Okay. But these charts are starting to turn around. I mean, that seems very clear. If you look at Bitcoin dominance and then you look at ETH on top of it, it's like, hey, wait a minute. Something might be going on here. So if Bitcoin confirms by taking out 63, if dominance continues to go down, if either Hyperliquid or Zcash starts rallying, in other words, the leaders start moving or new leaders emerge, you get reclaimers like Ethereum and Sol and the basing coins, SUI, XRP, and AERO, and voila, you have upside. Again, remember, Solana DEXes, everyone's acting like it's not there. Solana already gave the tell. It broke out of the triangle. It reclaimed 81. And the real resistance in Solana is probably 96. Why did we give up on Solana? Solana has to hold 81, right, with a 75 stop. If SUI breaks 80, it can go. If XRP breaks $1.20, it can go. If AERO breaks 60 cents, it can go. So coins we like, we've discussed this, right? Some of it on the YouTube member area, some here. Hyperliquid, Aave, and Jupiter for the rails of trading. Data, Chainlink, and Ondo. Chainlink up 10%. I'm not sure if you heard. AI, compute, and data. Tau, Render, and the most boring coin ever, Filecoin. DePIN, Helium, or take your pick. DePIN as a sector is massively underrated, particularly when you look at the cost of chips. No one is talking about this, and that's going to change. Everybody was buzzing about DePIN at the start of the year, and a lot of people said, hey, smart money's going to get into it. And of course, it goes down, it goes to zero. Now no one cares. Now this is when you do care. And of course, privacy, identity, Monero, and WorldCoin. I don't think this is complicated. I really don't. I mean, we have additional coins, which, we gave our members. Some of them are listed here. INJ, a layer 1, Pendle, right? Saylor is signaling that he's going to buy more Bitcoin by saying Bitcoin is digital energy. Okay, well, that was his original line, and he got in trouble when he started talking about digital capital, digital credit, and I think there was another digital. No more ChatGPT in the men's room, Mike. Just stick to digital energy. That seemed to work where, you stick actual energy and use it to make Bitcoin. And okay, that's okay. But The guy's also saying that, you know, you tried to knock me over for the 6th time and I'm still standing. I think he should have been more aggressive eliminating the story, but he's still there. Whatever he did seemed to work because he engineered a massive squeeze in this STRC product after, again, retail puked it. So retail's having a fantastic quarter. They puked Bitcoin. They puked STRC so they could buy semis. It's crazy banana pants. Okay, MicroStrategy's not rallying, but that's not a surprise because that common stock's got major problems. They do nothing but issue it. They sell their own more supply of their own stock. You know, for now, we should be grateful it didn't go to 0, to be honest with you. Okay, so we don't want the market to go below 58K. We obviously do not want to see another repeat, you know, and I think that's going to hinge on what happens with NASDAQ. So, you know, just as a point of information, you have the diamond formation in NASDAQ. Okay. This is very clearly a disaster going someplace to happen. Like this as an index, I don't know how this holds. You know, these chip companies, it seems like a head and shoulders top. And this level of FOMO down here with the money flow, this level of FOMO, yeah, that's kind of scary. All right. That's some unbelievable FOMO. And somebody wants to know why XLM is not in here. And, you know, I was going to put it in and I just mentally forgot about it. So let's do it. I mean, Stellar is doing everything right. It went straight down and held the Lux algo point. Now it's going back up. Bag holders are selling. Bag holders didn't sell the first rally, but now they're giving up and they're selling there and they're selling here. It's like, okay. Still holding the 200-day moving average, still holding the 21-day moving average, even though the market is down. And if you want to have a laugh, Bitcoin Cash, which was a massive canary in the coal mine on Saylor, is now up only. You know, I would love it if Roger Ver could finally be free and somebody found a use for this. You know, Bitcoin Lightning is interesting, and so is this. Is it the greatest thing ever? No. But it was a huge leading indicator because this was collapsing before everything else did. Now, if it's turning around, I'm interested in this. You know, I mean, could this lead Zcash? It certainly could. It certainly could. Let's go through this. So why not a Bitcoin bailout from the government? Because everybody wants to know, is Bitcoin too deep in the fabric of the U.S. financial system? Bitcoin's a $1 trillion asset, and you have, I don't know, like what's the total market cap of the stock market now? 20 trillion. If Bitcoin ever implodes after reaching true institutional scale, it could spark a global liquidity crisis, shaking faith in U.S. financial judgment, and potentially accelerate blah, 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 blah. Okay. Listen, bro, let me explain something to you. Bitcoin is a currency. And you know what? Once upon a time, currencies were insane. Currencies, you know, back in the days of old when knights were bold, were where technical analysis was used in legacy. Technical analysis was frowned upon in fundamental environments like stocks and bonds. They would keep charts in the drawer, or the chart guy would sit in a corner, like at JP Morgan when I worked there with Drew Baptiste, who eventually went to Morgan Stanley. You know, guys would call up Drew and goes, "Hey, Drew, what do you got on the charts? You got a chart? I can't have one on my desk. Do you got one?" That's what it used to be. And the chart guy used to sit in currencies because currencies were so wild. Dollar index went from 116 to 72 during the down market in stocks after the dot-com bubble. I mean, you used to have huge volatility in currencies. Huge. Bitcoin's a currency. They have huge volatility. Okay. I mean, I know everybody is into this cycle thing and Bitcoin has to go down 90%. Actually, it doesn't. It doesn't, because I still think this move is, it could be corrective unless you have, you know, some kind of September or October event, which you could, because NASDAQ can't stay up here forever. So I get it. But I mean, even if there was an event in October, does that move start from 85 and then go all the way down to 50 or something like that? I mean, you know, Bitcoin needs a bailout for the government because it goes down 50%. I don't know. I mean, the bailout that Bitcoin needs is a realization that the job market stinks and that the Fed has to lean towards dovish rather than hawkish. Because if they hike rates, this is what happened to Powell. Every time Powell would hike rates, all these technology companies would lay people off and blame it on higher interest rates. First, they blamed it on high interest rates. Then they blamed it on AI. And the fact of the matter is they're spending themselves into insensibility. And the only real way to cut costs in a meaningful way is to get rid of thousands of people, at least in the US, because of compensation and benefits. We do not have free medicine here. So the only way to cut is to cut people. I mean, you know, and the media wraps these like kind of dumb narratives around it. No, you know, Haven Peck says I'm long LIT, Zcash, and Hyperliquid. Let's welcome who's here. Frisky joining us on Twitter. Welcome. Okay, we have John 316, Gary the Holder. Welcome. Welcome. You guys actually beat Bull Runner on the stream. That's unprecedented that Bull Runner got beat, but that's okay. Bull Runner is he's like the world record holder on first on the stream. We have Zapadas, a member. Welcome, sir. Appreciate you for watching the show. DNT Saver. I got outs 22. Stacking crypto. Odd Dark hammering away on those emojis. God, I got to get that lizard emoji done. Thomas Chai, Cat D, welcome. Happy 4th from Grandpa Keeter. Big Daddy is here. A Spartan Colonel, welcome. Mojo, hello. Wallace Sandstrom, Haven Peck, Frisky on Twitter. Welcome to the show. Let me see if we got anybody else joining us from Twitter. No, that's all for the comments. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is the rare Sunday afternoon market update. We will see you next week.